You were 6 years old when you won your first World Cup. The trophy was a dented cooking pot. The stadium was the dusty alley outside your house. The crowd, 2 pigeons, 1 confused cat, and Mrs. Adama, who, for reasons still unknown, treated footballs like personal attacks. Every time you kicked the ball into her tomatoes, another sandal achieved orbit. To this day, you still don't know if she hated football or just had incredible aim. You celebrated anyway. Because when you're 6, imagination has a larger budget than reality. Back then, football was simple. You weren't trying to become famous. You weren't trying to become rich. You weren't trying to win the World Cup. You just wanted the ball. That's it. If someone brought a proper football, they became everyone's best friend. If they brought 2, they were basically FIFA. Every evening, your mother stood at the doorway shouting, "Come inside." And you'd yell back, 5 more minutes. Those 5 minutes somehow lasted another hour. It became a ritual. She'd shout, you'd negotiate, she'd threaten, you'd pretend not to hear. Then she'd shout your full name, the government version. That was the final whistle. Even Cristiano Ronaldo would have gone inside after hearing that. Your father rarely spoke about football. He didn't need to. He simply woke up before sunrise, worked all day, then drove 2 hours just so you could play 45 minutes on a pitch that had more potholes than grass. At the time, you genuinely thought he liked driving. Children have a remarkable ability to mistake sacrifice for routine. You didn't know fuel was expensive. You didn't know he'd skipped meals to buy your boots. You just thought, Dad always has money. Children are adorable. They're also financially illiterate. By 12, football stopped being a hobby. It became organized. Actual coaches, actual training, actual positions. The coach looked at you and said, "You'll be our striker." You smiled. Finally, goals, glory, fame. 3 training sessions later, he moved you into midfield. Apparently, your finishing ability had all the accuracy of a weather forecast. "You're good at seeing the game," he said. Football language for "please stop shooting." You sulked for a week. Years later, you'd realize that single decision made your entire career. Sometimes life doesn't reject your dream. It simply edits it. Training became different. Monday, fitness. Tuesday, passing drills. Wednesday, possession. Thursday, small-sided games. Friday, tactics. Saturday, match. Sunday, ice packs, laundry, and wondering why your legs hated stairs. Nobody sees this part. They see 90 minutes on television. They don't see the thousands of touches that happened long before anyone knew your name. You learned quickly that football wasn't 11 people chasing a ball. It was an ecosystem. Head coach, assistants, goalkeeping, fitness, physios, nutritionists, kit managers, scouts, doctors, psychologists, media officers. One player. Dozens of people quietly making sure that one player can perform for 90 minutes. The World Cup starts long before the tournament. It starts with people nobody ever applauds. Then came your first academy trial. You arrived wearing freshly cleaned boots. Everyone else looked better. Better boots. Better haircuts. Better confidence. One kid stretched like he'd already signed for Real Madrid. You hadn't even figured out where the changing rooms were. That's when you learned something. Talent gets you invited. Composure keeps you there. Then, your first rejection. We've decided to move forward with other players. One sentence. Years of dreaming, deleted with 12 words. You walked home, convinced football was over. Your mother didn't give a motivational speech. She simply washed your muddy kit, folded it, and placed it neatly on your bed. Tomorrow's training clothes. No lecture, no sympathy. Just one silent message. You're going again. Some people don't fix your confidence. They quietly refuse to let you quit. The second academy trial felt different. Not because you were better. Because you finally understood something. Scouts weren't looking for the kid who scored the most goals. They were looking for the kid who could still think after making a mistake. So this time, you stopped trying to impress everyone. You just played football. It worked. A week later, your phone rang, you'd made the academy. You celebrated for exactly 12 minutes. Then training started. The academy had one job, to turn talented kids into professionals. Some made it, most didn't. Football's brutal like that. 20 boys arrived together, 3 are in contracts, the rest quietly disappear into normal life. No farewell match, no sad music. One day they're beside you in training, the next, their locker is empty. You stop asking where they went, because deep down you're terrified someone will ask the same question about you. The sessions became relentless. Morning gym, afternoon tactical drills, video analysis, recovery, repeat. The coaches paused videos every few seconds. You were 2 steps too late. You should have passed earlier. Why are you jogging? You quickly learned something. Professional football isn't about spectacular moments. It's about making fewer mistakes than everyone else. Then puberty joined the opposition. One teammate suddenly grew 6 inches in a summer. Another became twice as fast. Meanwhile, you looked exactly the same. You stared in the mirror wondering if your growth spurt had been lost in the mail. Thankfully, football measures your brain too, not just your height. Then Marcus arrived. Every academy has one. The player everyone talks about, faster than you, stronger than you, better hair somehow. Even his warm-up looked expensive. For months, you compared yourself to him, until one coach pulled you aside. If you spend your whole career trying to become Marcus, football loses you. That sentence stayed with you, because from that day on, you stopped competing against Marcus. You competed against yesterday's version of yourself. Ironically, that's when you finally started catching him. At 16, the reserve team called. The football pyramid suddenly became real. Youth football, reserve football, professional football, national leagues, continental competitions. Every level faster than the last. Every mistake punished sooner. You thought you understood pressure. Then you played in front of people who paid for tickets. Turns out, missing an open goal sounds much louder when strangers are disappointed, especially when one of them yells, "My grandmother finishes better." You looked around. His grandmother was actually there. She nodded. That one hurt. The professional contract finally came, no dramatic orchestra. Just a plastic pen, a few signatures, and a handshake. Years of dreaming, reduced to paperwork. Adult life has an incredible talent for hiding life-changing moments inside boring afternoons. You left the office and called your parents. Your father answered. So, you finally got the job. Not you became a footballer, just you got the job. Maybe that's why you never became arrogant. To him, football was still work, just with better grass. Then came something bigger. A letter from the National Federation. You'd been selected for the youth national team. For the first time, you wore your country's badge. You stared at it for a long time before putting the shirt on. Funny. Clubs pay your salary. But one small badge can make grown men cry. And somehow, it weighs almost nothing. Playing for your country wasn't like playing for your club. At your club, people argued about your performance. For your country, people argued about your existence. Apparently, half the nation suddenly became football coaches. Most of them had never survived a 5-minute jog, yet somehow they all knew exactly where you should have passed the ball. Remarkable. Qualification began. Home, away, win, draw, lose, repeat. The table changed every match day. One bad game and newspapers politely suggested your retirement. One good game and children suddenly wanted your haircut. Football fans are wonderfully consistent. They overreact in both directions. The dressing room became your second home. That's where football actually happened. Not on the pitch, on the bus rides, the card games, the terrible jokes. The captain reminding everyone why they were there. One teammate snored so loudly, the physio genuinely checked if he was okay. He wasn't dying, just incredibly committed to sleeping. The tournament was finally secured. Your country had qualified. People flooded the streets. Fireworks, flags, music, complete strangers hugging each other. You'd think everyone had won the lottery. In a way, they had. Hope had returned, and football sells hope better than almost anything else. The World Cup training camp was another universe. Every session was recorded, measured, every heartbeat monitored. Nutritionists controlled what you ate. Physios controlled how you recovered. Analysts already knew how your next opponent liked receiving the ball. Nothing was left to chance. At this level, details quietly become trophies. The opening match arrived. You barely heard the anthem. Your heartbeat was louder. 90 minutes later, you'd survive. Not brilliantly, not terribly, just enough. Sometimes that's tournament football. Nobody remembers pretty group stage passes. They remember who kept advancing. Round 16. Quarterfinals. Each match demanded a different version of you. Against one team, you defended for your life. Against another, you barely stopped attacking. One match went to penalties. You discovered something terrifying. Walking from the halfway line to the penalty spot is somehow the longest walk on earth. You scored, mostly because your legs forgot they were supposed to be nervous. Then came the semifinal. Everything hurt now. Your ankles, your knees, your back, even muscles you were fairly sure had retired years ago. The physio looked at you and said, "You've got 90 minutes left." You laughed. "So does my left hamstring." Somehow both of you kept going. Then, the final. The match every child imagines. The one every retired player secretly misses. The whistle blew. Nobody wanted to make the first mistake. The first half disappeared. The second followed. Extra time. Every touch felt heavier. Every tackle took longer to recover from. You looked around. Everyone was exhausted. Even the ball looked tired. Then, your winger burst down the left side. He crossed. The defender got a touch. The goalkeeper got another. The ball floated into the air, almost apologetically. Instinct took over. You threw yourself toward it. You weren't trying to score. You were simply trying to reach it before someone else did. The ball hit you, your knee, your thigh. You honestly weren't sure. It certainly wasn't the cleanest goal in World Cup history. You've seen shopping carts turn more gracefully. But the ball crossed the line. Silence. For one impossible second, the entire stadium froze. Then, the noise arrived. Your teammates buried you beneath a mountain of hugs. One of them celebrated so enthusiastically, he nearly dislocated your shoulder. Ironically, the biggest injury of the tournament came from your own teammates. Worth it. Very much worth it. The final whistle sounded, and for a moment, nothing happened. Not because nobody cared, because your brain simply refused to believe it. You looked at the scoreboard, then at your teammates, then back at the scoreboard. You'd done it. Not just you, an entire nation. Somewhere, children were running into the streets pretending to be you. Somewhere, grown men who hadn't cried in years suddenly forgot they had reputations to protect. Somewhere, your mother was probably telling the television, "That's my son," as if the commentator might hear her. The medal was heavier than you expected. Not physically, emotionally, every rejection, every injury, every lonely bus ride home after training, every teammate who never made it this far. They all seemed to weigh something. You weren't standing on that podium alone. There were hundreds of invisible people standing beside you. Parents, coaches, teachers, physios, groundskeepers, friends. Even Mrs. Adama, who accidentally trained your first touch by throwing sandals at you. She deserved at least half an assist. Back home, the airport looked impossible. Thousands of people, flags everywhere. Songs you'd heard your whole life suddenly sounded different. People weren't celebrating football anymore. They were celebrating each other. For one beautiful day, nobody cared who was rich, who was poor, who voted for whom, who supported which club. The country remembered it had one name. Football had simply reminded everyone. Life became louder, sponsors called, interviews never ended. Every sentence you spoke somehow became tomorrow's headline. One harmless joke, and suddenly 12 television pundits were debating what you really meant. You quickly discovered fame has one unusual feature. People you've never met become strangely confident about who you are. Money changed too. The contracts became ridiculous. The houses became bigger. The cars became faster. You bought one because you dreamed about it as a kid. 3 weeks later, you were driving exactly the speed limit because speed bumps don't care about your salary. Humility comes in many forms. Sometimes, it's municipal road engineering. Then your father visited. He stood quietly in your garage, looked at every expensive car, nodded once, then asked, "So, which one carries chicken feed?" You laughed so hard you nearly dropped the keys. Some fathers have a PhD in keeping your ego unemployed. Years passed. New players arrived. You became one of the older voices in the dressing room. One teenager nervously asked for a photo with you. You almost laughed, because in your head you still felt like the kid chasing a ball through dusty streets. That's the strange thing about dreams. You never notice the exact moment you start living them. Then one evening, you visited the old neighborhood. The cooking pot was gone. Mrs. Adama's tomatoes had finally remembered. Funny, places don't shrink. People grow. A group of children were playing football. One of them shouted, "I'm scoring the winner." Another yelled, "No, I'm taking the penalty." You smiled. None of them shouted, "I'm signing sponsorship deals," or "I'm negotiating image rights." Children still dream the right way. They dream about football. Not fame. Next, you quietly rolled the ball back when it escaped. One little boy looked at you and said, "Thanks, mister," then immediately ran off. No autograph, no selfie, no idea who you were. Oddly enough, that felt wonderful. For a few seconds, you weren't the man who won the World Cup. You were just another person helping keep the game going. Maybe that's all football ever wanted from you. People think life changes after winning the World Cup because of the trophy. It doesn't. The trophy stays in a cabinet. The medals gather dust. The headlines disappear. Eventually, someone else lifts it. What really changes is what happens inside you. You stop asking, "Will I ever make it?" and start asking, "Who can I help make it next?" Because one day, your legs become slower. Your recovery takes longer. A teenager eventually steals your starting position, not because you became worse, because that's football. Someone once stepped aside for you. Now, it's your turn. And strangely, it doesn't hurt as much as you expected, because you finally understand the World Cup was never yours to keep. You were simply trusted to carry it for a little while. And somewhere, on a dusty street, another child is already chasing a dented cooking pot, completely convinced he's about to win it next.